Why me God? There was once a family named the Straussas who lived in a small village in Germany during the time of the Holocaust. They were a loving family who cherished each other deeply. However, their world was turned upside down when the Nazis took their youngest daughter, a disabled child named Hannah. The family was devastated by the loss of their beloved daughter and were filled with fear for her safety. They searched for any information they could find, but there was no trace of her. As the months passed, their hope faded and they feared the worst. One day, the Straussas received news that Hannah had died at the mental hospital. The family knew of rumors about the Nazi doctors euthanizing the disabled at the hospital. The family was heartbroken, and they struggled to understand why God would let such a terrible thing happen. They had always been faithful and dedicated to their faith, and yet it seemed as though God had abandoned them in their time of need. The family grappled with their grief and their questions about God's presence in the world. They felt a deep sense of anger and sadness, and they couldn't help but wonder why God would allow the Nazis to take Hannah, a disabled child who was innocent and helpless. One day, an elderly rabbi visited the family and sat with them as they shared their pain and confusion. The rabbi listened to their questions. The rabbi said that God allows suffering in the world, not because he is cruel or indifferent, but because of sin. The Nazis sinned against the Jews, homosexuals, mental illness, the disabled, and others they deemed different and inferior. However, suffering can refine and purify our souls, to help us grow in compassion and wisdom, and to bring us closer to Him. The Straussas family were angry but also comforted by the rabbi's words and came to understand that God was with Hannah, even in the midst of her suffering. They found comfort in the knowledge that Hannah was in a better place. The story of the Straussas is a reminder that suffering and evil are a part of the human experience, and that it is natural to question why God allows them to occur. It is important to remember that God is always present, even in the midst of suffering, and that He is using it for the greater good. The question of why God allows bad things to happen to people is one of the most fundamental and complex issues that has plagued humanity for centuries. Many people view the existence of evil and suffering as proof that God is either not all-powerful, not all-knowing, or not all-good. However, several arguments attempt to explain why God permits evil in the world. One of the most common arguments is the free will defense. This argument states that God created human beings with the capacity for free will, which is necessary for a meaningful and fulfilling life. However, with free will comes the possibility of choosing evil. God cannot interfere with our choices without violating our free will and robbing us of our dignity as moral agents. As a result, God allows evil to exist in the world because He values our free will and desires that we live meaningful and fulfilling lives. Another argument is the greater good defense, which states that God allows evil to occur in the world because it serves a greater good. This could mean that God uses evil to bring about a greater good in the world, such as the development of character and the growth of compassion. It could also mean that God allows evil to occur because He is bringing people to a better place in the afterlife. For example, suffering in this life could be seen as a way of purifying our souls and making us better suited for heaven. A third argument is the soul-building defense, which states that God allows evil to occur in the world to build character and to help people grow. This argument asserts that God allows suffering to develop spiritual and moral qualities in people, such as patience, perseverance, and compassion. These qualities can only be developed through difficulty and hardship, and therefore, God allows evil to occur in order to bring about this growth. A final argument is the mystery defense, which states that the existence of evil and suffering in the world is simply a mystery that cannot be fully explained by human reasoning. This argument asserts that God's ways are beyond human comprehension and that we must trust in His goodness and wisdom, even though we do not fully understand why He permits evil to occur. While the question of why God allows bad things to happen to people is a complex one, several arguments attempt to explain it. Whether it is due to free will, the greater good, soul building, or mystery, these arguments all assert that God is ultimately good and that the existence of evil and suffering in the world serves a greater purpose. Regardless of one's beliefs, it is clear that the issue of evil and suffering is a profound and challenging one that has yet to be fully resolved. What do Jesus' teachings say about why bad things happen to people? Jesus' teachings offer a unique perspective on why bad things happen to people. In the Christian faith, Jesus is seen as the Son of God, who came to earth to bring salvation and to demonstrate God's love for humanity. Through His teachings and actions, Jesus offers insight into the reasons for suffering and evil in the world. One of the key themes in Jesus' teachings is that suffering is a result of sin. According to the Bible, sin entered the world through the disobedience of Adam and Eve, and since that time, all people have been affected by sin and its consequences. Jesus taught that suffering is a result of the fallen state of the world, and that it is a result of people's choices to turn away from God and to live in disobedience to His will. Like the example above, the Nazis were evil and sinful, and innocent people were hurt by their actions. However, Jesus also taught that God is always present in the midst of suffering and that He is a source of comfort and hope for those who are suffering. In the book of John, Jesus said, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." This verse conveys Jesus' message that even though suffering is a reality in the world, he has overcome it through his death and resurrection, and that those who follow him can find hope and comfort in the midst of their suffering. Another theme in Jesus' teachings is the idea of redemption. According to the Christian faith, Jesus came to earth to redeem humanity from sin and to restore the world to its original state of perfection. Through his death and resurrection, Jesus made it possible for people to be reconciled to God and to experience forgiveness and new life. In this sense, Jesus' teachings on why bad things happen to people can be seen as a message of hope and comfort. While he acknowledges that suffering is a result of sin and that it is a reality in the world, he also offers the promise of redemption and the hope of a better future. Through his death and resurrection, Jesus has overcome the world and has opened the way for people to be reconciled to God and to experience new life. We, humans, have a strange way of trying to make sense of events and situations which defy explanation. Suffering is one of those situations which defies an understanding that we can comprehend. The horrors of the evil and sinfulness of one human to another are unacceptable. The comfort we can receive is that God is with us during those times. God loves us,